Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Shorman, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. Our guest today is Sam MacRoberts, who is Litigation Director of the Kansas Justice Institute. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Kansas Justice Institute is a public interest litigation center with a mission to protect individual liberty and constitutional rights of all Kansans. So it's good to have Sam MacRoberts on the line with us today. He has earned his political science and Juris Doctor's degree from the University of Kansas. Sam, welcome to our program.
Thanks, Gary. Happy to be here.
You know, we're looking through, we always talk about challenging times and how you lead through them. You've obviously done that in the legal side of things. But before we go there, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks. So I grew up in Leawood, Kansas, and you're right, I went to KU for undergrad and law school, started practicing law in 2006, and really had a passion my whole life of standing up for people and kind of fighting against what I thought were injustices, or if I thought something was unfair. I've always been very passionate about pushing back against that. And so it's really a natural fit to be here at Kansas Justice Institute because I really do have the best job in the world. What I get to do is I get to fight the government when they are doing something that's wrong or unfair or unconstitutional. And so for me, I love getting up every day and seeing what I can do to help the people of Kansas.
What inspired you, or maybe better yet, who inspired you to do this?
I've had a lot of mentors throughout the years. I guess my parents always instilled in me to do the right thing and to stand up for people who have been harmed or wronged. And they made sure to back me up if I ever stood up for someone and maybe I got in trouble with a teacher or something like that. They told me, well, we've got your back. And so my parents really did help me through growing up, instilling that in me. And it's really stuck with me for all of these years. And so my parents first and foremost, but I've had a lot of mentors along the way. But they've all been helpful to me and helped me in different ways throughout the years. So there's some lawyers who helped me. There's some individuals, public figures who have helped me throughout the years. But all of that kind of leads to where we are today.
So let's talk about public interest litigation. What does that mean? I mean, from what size of litigation is this, or is it all great big stuff? What are you looking at when you look at that and tell people what public litigation is all about?
We're a free law firm, so we don't charge anybody a dime to represent them. And when we do a public interest case, really what it means is we're doing something that's not just going to help our specific client, but it's going to do something much bigger. And in other words, what we're doing is we're bringing a constitutional case. So if we win our constitutional case, it'll help our client, but it's also going to help Kansans live freer lives. So that's kind of what we look at when we're doing a case. We do not sue for money either. We're not like a plaintiff's firm who wants to sue another person for money damages. That's not what we do. We sue to get an order from a judge declaring something unconstitutional. So our cases take on something much bigger than our very specific case that we're doing.
So you've been in a lot of different courts, local, regional, state, across the federal courts as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So started off in Kansas and Missouri and left for a little bit, came back and started Kansas Justice Institute in 2019. And when we started filing cases, we are in federal court down in Wichita. We're in federal court in KCK. We're also in state courts, Shawnee County District Court. We've been in Johnson County District Court, so all around the state.
What about a case you're doing one working for a lady, Bryn Green and Hayes, who's fighting back against the State Board of Cosmetology? What can you tell us about that case? Because that kind of sums up what you're trying to do for people. But tell us a little bit about that unique legal battle.
So Bryn is a young mom. What she wants to do is start a business that's going to give her the flexibility to raise her young son. And what she wants to do is offer sugaring. Sugaring is a way to remove hair, and it's made of sugar, water, and lemon juice. And basically all you do is you combine it, turns into a paste. You put the paste on the hair, you gently pull the paste off, and the hair is removed. Very easy, it's safe, it's natural. But in Kansas, you can't do that unless you have a board-issued license. And in Kansas, to get that license, you either have to go to an esthetician school or a cosmetology school. So esthetician school is 1,000 hours, and cosmetology school is 1,500 hours. Bryn lives in Hayes. There isn't an esthetician school, so she would be forced to go and take 1,500 hours of very expensive schooling to be able to use a safe product, sugar, to gently remove hair. And here's where it gets even more bizarre. According to our calculations, less than 1% of the school is devoted to sugaring, if it's even taught at all. And if she were to graduate from the school, she's got to take 2 tests from the Board of Cosmetology. And again, according to our calculations, at least one of the exams doesn't ask a single, it doesn't have you perform sugaring to get the license. And the other test has less than 1% devoted to sugaring. So really what would be happening is Bryn would be forced to spend tens of thousands of dollars to go to a school that's really not teaching her sugaring at all. And so we filed a lawsuit against the Board of Cosmetology and the state of Kansas under the Kansas Constitution, not a federal case, saying she has the right to earn an honest living. And this is a case that other lawyers really couldn't take on because it's going to take hundreds of hours and we're doing it for free. And it wouldn't make sense for Bryn to hire another attorney because she's not going to spend $50,000 to hire an attorney to fight the Board of Cosmetology, especially given the low cost of sugaring.
Well, take a look at that and see. So you start and you spend hundreds of hours doing this, but that's not the only type of case you have, because there seems like there's several others that are kind of on the list. Give us some examples of other things you're also taking a look at.
We just wrapped up a case, and I love this case for so many reasons. We represented Ellen Finnerty, and Ellen had this dream business of selling homegrown honey and homegrown produce. So the plan was she's developed this really amazing garden in her backyard, and she wanted to put in beehives. So the city of Ottawa, Kansas had this really archaic and unreasonable ordinance that said you can keep bees as a hobby, but you can't keep bees if you intend to sell anything related to that beehive. And that really didn't make any sense to us. And Ellen reached out to the city and said, hey, how do I get this? How do I get a permit for this? And the city told her, sorry, there is no permit. You just can't do it. So what we did was we filed a lawsuit against the city of Ottawa saying, hey, Ellen has the constitutional right to keep bees. She has a constitutional right to use her backyard in a way that doesn't harm other people. And she has the right to earn an honest living. And so Ottawa, you can't create unreasonable regulations on property rights and the right to earn an honest living. And Ellen is a single mom, and this was a way for her to generate extra money to help support her family. And so we wanted to help out Ellen, and eventually we filed this lawsuit, and to the city's great credit, they recognized the issues with their code and rewrote their laws. So now today, Ellen Finnerty is allowed to keep bees in her backyard to earn an honest living.
Well, it's interesting, the different cases you've had. I know you just had one that ended successfully with raw milk. What was that one?
Yeah, so raw milk was, I love this case as well. When we first started up, somebody told me, hey, did you know that you can't advertise raw milk? And I thought, no, there's no way that can't be true. And sure enough, we went to the Department of Agriculture website, and it was there. It said you cannot have off-farm advertising for raw milk. And for your listeners, they probably know what it is, but for the few who don't, raw milk is just unpasteurized milk. So in
Straight
Kansas,
from the cow milk.
Yeah, or goat. And so for about 50 years or so, Kansas had this statute that said you can produce raw milk. You just can't talk about raw milk or advertise raw milk away from your farm. What you could do is put up a sign on your own property. Well, Mark and Coraline Bunner, who live near Hayes, lived at the end of a dirt road. And so for them, having a sign wasn't helpful at all. And they had this beautiful facility where they produced really fine raw milk, and it was built to grade A specifications, actually. But then they chose to do raw milk instead. And all they really wanted to do was build a website. And they wanted to tell people, hey, come down to our farm, take a look at what we're doing. I think if you see what we're doing, you're going to buy our raw milk. But again, Kansas prevented that. And it was really a classic in our mind, a classic violation of Mark and Coraline's free speech rights. In our view, they have the right to advertise, they have a right to build their website, and they have the constitutional right to be able to talk about their products away from their farm. So we filed a lawsuit against the state of Kansas saying, hey, this is a violation of Mark and Coraline's free speech rights. Again, to the state's great credit, they signed a consent judgment almost immediately after we filed the case. And a consent judgment is basically an admission that, hey, this statute is unconstitutional and we're not going to enforce this against Mark or Coraline or other people or anyone else in the state of Kansas. And so after the court signed off on that consent judgment, now Mark and Coraline have a great website. It's beautiful. And it's Shepherd's Gate, which is near Pfeiffer, Kansas.
When you take a look at these cases, how do you decide which one? Because I'm guessing there's a lot of people that want help with certain issues that they're having with the state or the government. How do you evaluate those cases and say, hey, we have the bandwidth, we have the time, we have the knowledge to be able to help?
What we try to do is take on cases that we think are going to have a big impact for constitutional rights. And so if we think that a potential case is going to make a difference for Kansans, we're going to look at it. And the other thing that we really look at is making sure that our clients are up for and available to publicize their cases. So a lot of law firms, they don't publicize their cases. It's all done, kind of how everybody thinks lawyers work, but not us. We want to talk about the issue so that way the public can understand, for example, this raw milk advertising ban. There are a lot of people, if you didn't sell raw milk, you had no idea about the advertising ban. Once we brought this lawsuit, I got so many people who told me, I had no idea they were doing that. Thank you so much for fighting for Mark and Coraline. Thank you for standing up for everyone's free speech rights. And so that's kind of how we look at our cases. We want to have a very big impact on freedom and liberty.
Our guest today is Sam MacRoberts from the Kansas Justice Institute. We'll be back to talk about how you can find out more about what they do and how they do it. But first, let's take a break for Worth Wealth Management.
The most successful investors are those that can keep their emotions in check and take a longer-term view at what portfolios will be worth 3 to 5 years down the road. I'd say that's the most important in determining what investor outcomes are. Market corrections will continue in the future. We've seen many of them over the years, only to see equity prices rise higher, and that'll be the case in the future.
Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Our guest today is Sam MacRoberts, who is the director of the Kansas Justice Institute. Sam, it's been interesting, the different types of issues that you have looked at, directed, and actually created change. But how do people find out about you? What do they do to learn about how you work and maybe what, if they have an idea or something they want you to pursue, how do they get involved?
The best way to reach out to us is through kansasjusticeinstitute.org. And it's all spelled out, kansasjusticeinstitute.org. We have a submit a case button there. You go to that, you fill it out, and that's how we take our case submissions. But you can look at our cases You can see the kind of work we do. But even if somebody went to that case page and they didn't see something they thought would fit, I'd still encourage you, just do the submit a case. You never know what's out there.
Sam, one of the things that I was thinking about talking, you mentioned that, other law firms can't take this because they can't afford to put the hours of time in. How are you supported in the efforts to get this done? Because it does take a lot of time to be able to litigate these issues and research what goes on, make all of the calls and the follow-ups and all the things that go with a case. How do you make this happen for Kansas?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have some very helpful donors who support our cause. And so we are able to take on cases for free to be able to litigate things that other lawyers couldn't do.
Is that something that other lawyers are also helpful with? Because sometimes, while they can't do it, this may be a resource. Do you get referrals from other law firms?
I do get referrals, and I would encourage other lawyers who, if they think that there's a potential constitutional claim and they don't feel like they can do it for one reason or another, I would definitely encourage other lawyers to reach out to us. We can see if we can help out, either to take on that client, or if they've got a case going on, we're happy to file briefs in support of their clients as well.
Kansas Justice Institute. Very interesting program. You can check them out at kansasjusticeinstitute.org. Sam, thank you for being a part of our program. Thanks for taking the time to do this. You have an interesting group that does work for Kansans and in many ways helps Kansans understand and do better and create a living for themselves as well. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Gary.
Sam MacRoberts is our guest, who is the director of the Kansas Justice Institute. You've been listening to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, brought to you by Worth Wealth Management. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.